Well, hello, and thank you very much for clicking on this video today. So today, we're talking about the SAS, the many accusations they have against them, the whistleblowers that have come forward, talking about the war crimes that members of the SAS has committed, about how the SAS essentially deleted documents, deleted evidence related to the activities, and how the SAS basically has effectively no oversight whatsoever and has gone rogue. And so this is coming from Declassified UK. Now, what we're going to be doing here is this has been a story that's been rambling on for quite a long time, a few years, and bits and bobs of it has kind of come out over that time. So we'll be taking this from four particular documents or for particular articles by Declassified UK, because it outlines what's been happening, and it's it also kind of outlines in chronological order. So once you take all of this information into account, you get a very broad picture. So let's delve into this. So there has been, or is, a current inquiry into about accusations about the SAS and what the members of the SAS have been doing. So we'll start with the first one. So, key evidence held at a UK Special Forces headquarters containing allegations that the SAS had killed Afghans in cold blood was destroyed to prevent the military police from seeing it, an inquiry has been told. Bear in mind, this is dated from the 30th of January, so this is an older one, but once we take all of these pieces, all these articles together, you get the entire picture. Senior Special Forces officers and defence officials were so desperate to cover up the SAS activity in Afghanistan that crucial data was deleted from an IT system at the higher headquarters of Special Forces, Inquiry Chairman Lord Justice Haddon-Cave said. He noted that the data was wiped, and I quote, wiped before the military police could seize them and examine it. But he revealed that with independent help, the inquiry had managed to get a backup copy and intended to restore the data. It was the latest testimony in an inquiry that has placed unprecedented spotlight on the elite band of British troops that have a degree of protection from security greater than that even enjoyed by the security and intelligence services such as MI5, MI16 and GCHQ. The SAS has also benefited from negative hypocrisy. Officially, there is a blanket ban on reporting the activity of the SAS and its naval equivalent, the Special Boat Service. But as the journalist points out, yet defence journalists are discreetly encouraged to describe their daring do, so long as they praise them as heroes, much as they are in fact in fiction and on television. So, until Haddon-Cave's inquiry, UK Special Forces enjoyed a total lack of scrutiny, even as their role in armed conflict became increasingly significant on anti-terror operations in the Middle East. Haddon-Cave had evidence from Alan Pusley, a former chief constable of Kent Police, who criticised the inappropriate and premature closure of a military police investigation into the SAS. Pusley said the probe, called Operation Northmoor, was a murder investigation as serious as you could get. Northmoor was delayed for years by the military police's failure to withstand bullying from SAS commanders, and eventually shut down by the last Conservative government that we had. So you can thank Rishi Sunak for that. Yet the truth is gradually emerging, with a former senior Special Forces officer telling Haddon-Cave's inquiry that SAS troops in Afghanistan had a golden pass allowing them to get away with murder. The officer, who was granted anonymity, referred to what was called a flat packing, butting pillows over the heads of detainees before killing them with a pistol. Another SAS officer referred to blooding new recruits. One described how SAS soldiers dropped weapons next to unarmed Afghans after they'd been killed. Those covering up the crimes were called Mr. Wolf. As you can imagine, a reference to the character in Quentin Tarantino's film Pulp Fiction, which, this doesn't sound terrible at all. So, General Sir Mark Carleton-Smith, a director of the UK Special Forces who became head of the army, was aware of such allegations but failed to share it with military police. This has been reported by the BBC. Another general, Gwyn Jenkins, knew of claims the SAS had executed handcuffed detainees in Afghanistan but locked the evidence in a safe instead of sharing it with detectives. There's one thing to bear in mind. This was from about a year ago, Rishi Sunak, in his last public appointment before the 2024 election, made Jenkins the UK's National Security Advisor. The then Cabinet Secretary, Simon Case, said Jenkins was extraordinarily placed for the job. I mean, if your job is to basically cover up war crimes, then yes, I guess he is excellently placed to do that. So one thing to bear in mind is the SAS is actually exempt from the Freedom of Information Act. Neither Parliament's Intelligence Committee nor its Defence Committee can scrutinise what it gets up to. So the most spectacular examples of hypocrisy surrounding Britain's special armed forces have involved D-notices issued by what is now called the Defence Security Media Advisory DSMA Committee. These involve editors and publishers operating a voluntary system of self-censorship in cooperation with the MOD and its intelligence agencies. So you already have many media outlets basically self-censoring themselves in order to protect the SAS and the greater military-industrial complex as a whole. In its official history, Admiral Nicholas Wilson, a former secretary of the committee, observes almost all the publicity which the UKSF, the UK Special Forces, has attracted has been inspired directly by UK SF leakers or through ex-SF leakers. And one thing to note about that is, and it goes on to give you an example, the military defence was furious when details emerged about how Special Forces freed British soldiers captured by rebels in Sierra Leone in 2000. British paratroopers participating in the Special Forces-led operation felt no inhibition talking frankly about their part, Wilkinson noted. Lord David Richards, the former Chief of Defence Staff, once told me he had broken the official rule that nothing should be said about the SAS. An enemy's knowledge about Britain's Special Forces and what they could do was in itself a powerful weapon, he suggested. So they're very happy to break their own rules when it comes to reporting on it if it makes them look great, essentially. That was before the allegations of war crimes and extrajudicial killings in Afghanistan started to surface. Thanks to this inquiry, the SAS may now be seen in a new light. So that is just one part, and so that was dated 30th of January 2025. And so quite a lot has actually changed about more information that has come forward about the SAS and what they're doing. So this is dated 1st of December 2025, and this is by the same guy, Richard Norton-TAYLOR. So, a senior British Special Forces officer warned that the failure to own up to criminal behaviour in Afghanistan by the SAS, including shooting toddlers in their beds, would allow the regiment to descend into the sewer and sink to levels of despotic regimes. Devastating evidence about a cover-up by Special Forces was released on Monday by an independent judge-led inquiry into repeated allegations of extrajudicial executions by elite British troops. Explaining why he decided to blow the whistle, the senior officer told the inquiry, in hitherto secret evidence, it's not loyalty to your organisation to stand by and watch it go down the sewer. A soldier who was an assistant chief of staff for operations at the Special Forces headquarters said, "We were there in Afghanistan to bring law and order and human security and justice. We failed." Given evidence in closed sessions of the inquiry about events in Afghanistan between 2010 and 2013, he added, "Right now and beyond Afghanistan, we are facing off against despotic autocracies. It seems to be obvious we should not sink to their level." A senior officer who worked closely with the most senior SAS commanders raised the alarm about, as he calls it, a cancer of illegal behaviour within a specific SAS squadron that was constantly rebuffed. Transcripts of evidence released, despite objections by the military defence, can reveal. The transcripts have been redacted to protect the identities of the soldiers involved in the SAS squadrons. However, Declassified has reported how the inquiry was forced on by the Ministry of Defence after increasing credible claims of cold-blooded murder, of planting weapons on innocent civilians and deleting incriminating documents. The senior officer, identified by his cipher N1466, described how he was deeply troubled by what he suspected was the unlawful killing of innocent people, including children, but also the absence of what I considered, at the time, should have been the response of all officers, including very senior officers in the chain of command, and I struggled to come to terms with what happened. He added, "When you look back on it, on those people who died unnecessarily, there were 2 toddlers shot in their bed next to their parents." Oh, Christ. You know, all that would not necessarily have come to pass if it had been stopped. He may have been referring to the shootings of Bilal and Imran Uzbakzai in 2012. Bilal, aged 1, so a serious threat, was wounded in the face and shoulder, while Imran, aged 3, had abdominal injuries. Both survived, but their parents, Hussein and Rukia, died from headshots. The officer described how he came to view that the issue of extrajudicial killings was not confined to a small number of soldiers, but was potentially widespread, and was apparently known to many within the UK SF Special Forces. He said he regretted not pressing the director of the UK Special Forces to report his serious concerns to the Royal Military Police and Special Investigations Branch. A senior civil servant identified only as N1803 did not later inform a director of Special Forces about evidence of potential criminality the transcripts can now reveal. N1466 said he lost confidence in the willingness of senior UK SAF officers to report allegations. Describing himself as fiercely loyal to the elite regiments, he commented, I didn't join the UK SF for this sort of behaviour. Toddlers to get shot in their beds or random killings. He suggested Special Forces soldiers were deliberately seeking to engage in fighting aged males on target, regardless of whether they posed a threat. He continued, I will be clear, we're talking about war crimes. We're talking about taking detainees, and executing them with a pretense, the pretense being that they conducted violence against the forces. I've been very blunt there, but that was what I felt at the time. And so this is kind of just the tip of the iceberg, really. Another Special Forces officer, anonymised as N5461, told the inquiry, let's be clear, EJK, extrajudicial killings, happened in Afghanistan. We know that increasingly in court, and that's probably just the tip of the iceberg. The UK Special Forces are not immune to it. A third soldier, identified as N244, who monitored missions in Afghanistan for Special Forces headquarters, became suspicious about a rising number of detainees being killed after allegedly trying to overpower their captors. He thought detainees would have to be incredibly high on drugs or have a death wish if they managed to find a gun after being captured and tried to fight their way out. A Ministry of Defence spokesperson came out and said, well, it is mostly pointless and meaningless. The government is fully committed to supporting the independent inquiry, which it isn't, but we'll get to that, relating to Afghanistan as it continues its work, and we are hugely grateful for all former and current defence employees who have so far given evidence. So, the inquiry does continue, and so that's kind of where we are, and this was released in the 29th of May. So what we've heard is war crimes, about there is a culture within the SAS of just murdering people, murdering innocent civilians, murdering detainees, and this is coming from whistleblowers who served in the SAS, and it gets even worse. So, an initial internal review into reports of war crimes committed by the SAS soldiers in Afghanistan was dismissed in just one day. Newly declassified documents have revealed. The file provides further evidence that senior special forces willfully ignored persistent reports that elite British troops were executing unarmed Afghans. It is among a batch of heavily redacted witness statements and transcripts released on Friday. The latest from the ongoing judge-led inquiry into the killings of 80 people during SAS counter-terrorism raids in Afghanistan between 2010 and 2013. The inquiry, which began in 2023, was forced on a reluctant Ministry of Defence after sustained legal battles and media investigations brought credible claims that special forces had committed cold-blooded murder, planted weapons on innocent civilians, and deleted incriminating documents from computers, which we've already gone through. Many of the files, evidence, and testimony from the inquiry, which is heard in both closed and open, are regularly released to the public. However, the closed session files which were published are redacted or provided in summary. The files released were heavily redacted and included evidence from the Chief of Staff to the Director of Britain's Special Forces in 2010 and 2011, identified only by cipher N2252. He said he worked closely with the then Director of Special Forces, General Jacko Page, who has also not been named by the inquiry. The identity of all the special forces named in the private hearings of the inquiry have been suppressed. N2252 was told about allegations that more bodies than weapons were being found after SAS operations had raised them with his colleagues. The inquiry has already heard how, after an operation in February 2011, in which 8 people were killed, including a 15-year-old boy, Mohammed Tahir, N2252 wrote to the Special Forces Senior Legal Advisor, N2108, alerting him to yet another one of the more bodies than weapons. Soon afterwards, an operation called Operation Tyburn, N2252 emailed the legal advisor for EKA, enemy killed in action, 2 weapons recovered. Evidence released on Friday shows how senior Special Forces officers were extremely reluctant to pass the growing reports of unlawful actions to the SAS to the military police. For years, they dismissed the growing evidence of execution of unarmed civilians as rumours, which, this is just the classic case of a self-regulation. Like, of course, you have the military industrial complex, you have the SAS, which is built on this culture of secrecy, how they don't face scrutiny, and what press releases they do get are mostly ones to make them look good. And when you have that culture, it is no surprise that they were incredibly unwilling to investigate any accusations of wrongdoing. So the inquiry was established under Lord Justice Haddon-Cave after mounting evidence in the press reports and evidence by high-ranking Special Forces officers, and kudos to them for coming out and basically being whistleblowers who, as it says here, decided to blow the whistle on serious criminal activities by SAS troops. The whistleblower said SAS soldiers he commanded had committed war crimes by murdering prisoners in Afghanistan, telling the Royal Military Police that a cancer had infected an SAS squadron. The whistleblower's devastating statement was placed in a safe at the headquarters of Special Boat Services. So they just buried it, essentially, in a safe, in a literal safe, a naval equivalent of the SAS, by the head of the SBS, Colonel Gwyn Jenkins. Last year, General Jenkins, a Royal Marine, was appointed the first Sea Lord, the head of the Navy. It is unsurprising that Military of Defence has persistently objected to the inquiry's attempts to reveal more evidence it has been hearing. The inquiry has insisted that the personal security of individual Special Forces soldiers who took part in Operation Afghanistan and whistleblowers must be protected. But there is growing evidence manifested by the delays in releasing even Friday's redacted evidence that the Ministry is attempting to block proposals to release information solely on the grounds that secrecy is needed to protect the reputation of the SAS and the operations from further security and embarrassment. So, now we get to the most recent one, the 14th of July 2026. So, this is released today. And this goes into not just the accusations, but also just the rampant, awful culture of the SAS. So, let's continue. Damning evidence of the culture of Britain's Special Forces from their training camps in Herefordshire to the battlefields of Afghanistan was released on Tuesday. It was disclosed by the judge-led inquiry set up in the wake of detailed reports of unarmed civilians being executed in cold blood in night raids by SAS soldiers. A Special Forces soldier said prisoners in Afghanistan and Iraq were put on the prongs of forklift trucks, which they were raised and driven so fast that they fell off. It was something they did for fun, doing this and jamming on the brakes so they fell off, one inquiry witness said she had been told. The inquiry, chaired by an appeal court judge, Sir Charles Haddon-Cave, also heard that alcohol, banned for everyone else in the military, was widespread in the Special Forces. Normal rules, including respect for rank and observance of dress, were also ignored by the SAS, which was disconnected from the rest of the British Army. In evidence first heard in a closed hearing, Christopher Green, a former Army officer, testified that the SAS was under a chain of command that, and I quote, did not place the same level of significance on the moral domain in the way we fight. He said the SAS seemed to be out of control, benefiting from a culture of exceptionalism. While he was called a Taliban-loving apologist who could not be trusted and had no authority to contradict elite special forces, he was told by a senior army commander in Helmand to drop his questioning of the SAS tactics. Green, who became a whistleblower after serving in Afghanistan in 2012 and later gave a statement to the military police, told the inquiry that the rules that applied to the rest of the army in the conduct of military operations did not apply to the SAS. So basically they can do what the hell they like. In its attempt to cover up the evidence, Green was also denied access to gun tapes, video footage of Special Forces operations. He told the inquiry he described the refusal to let him see the tapes as an admission of guilt. He said, "What I would like to see," he said at the end of his evidence, "is the British Army, which has been losing wars for the last 20 plus years, restored to being a winning organisation rather than a losing one." Green referred to an SAS night raid in the village of Rahim in Helmand province in Afghanistan in 2012, when 3 young men, described as innocent farmers, were killed. The Ministry of Defence later paid their mother more than £3,600. It is said the money was not compensation, but an assistance payments to calm local atmospherics. So that's it then. It's another admission of pure guilt. No, we're not paying them compensation. We're not paying money to try and shut them up. No. This is just to calm local atmospherics. Don't worry about it. All right. Yeah, I'll believe that. So, the inquiry has heard how British Special Forces drew up kill lists and engaged in night raids, sometimes executing unarmed Afghans in their beds and planting drop weapons on their bodies to justify the killings. Among several reports on the SAS, Declassified has described how a senior British Special Forces officer warned the failure to own up to criminal behaviour in Afghanistan by the SAS, including shooting toddlers in their beds, would allow the regiment to descend into the sewer, which we talked about earlier, and sink to the level of despotic regimes. Evidence to the inquiry released on Tuesday also includes a witness statement by Monica Grenfell, who described coarse and feral and racial comments heard as she worked at the SAS training camp in Herefordshire. It was Grenfell who said that she was told by a Special Forces soldier during her time at the camp about the detainees in Afghanistan and Iraq being driven on the forklift trucks, describing a corrosive atmosphere. She said that the SAS portrayed themselves as a brand of brothers, but were far from it, with the two main units, quote, hating each other. And if you're interested, she has written an account, as it is noted in this particular article, of her work for SAS support services under the pseudonym Monica Lavers, and I believe she has written a book about this. So this is quite a lot to take in. So, as I've said before, I've heard about this kind of story kind of bubbling away in the media for some time, and I've seen bits and bobs about it. But there are certain facts here which just can't be denied. We have whistleblowers saying British Special Forces, the SAS, have just been outright murdering civilians. They've been massacring them. And these are the incidents that are being reported. If we were to do a much broader, much more open inquiry into what has been going on, it's almost certain that we would find more wrongdoing by the SAS. But it's also, and I think it kind of comes back to the legacy of, I don't know, I guess you might call it imperialism, that these people feel that they basically have a right to do this to people. And what is even more distressing is how, when one of the whistleblowers talking about how him trying to basically investigate these incidents was met with complete hostility, and about I was called a Taliban sympathizer and all that kind of thing. The unfortunate reality is there's a lot of public debate which is basically silenced by the state and their various minions who use this kind of language when people, whether it be journalists or ordinary people, or whistleblowers tried to speak out about these incidents, tried to speak up for people who have been basically victimized by the British Army and the US Army as well, and they're basically just maligned and called terrorist sympathizers, people that are just out to tear down and destroy the noble reputation of the armed forces. Yes, this noble armed forces that is just outright murdering innocent civilians and then planting weapons on them. What a great legacy that is. What a great legacy to defend. Christ. Well, I'm going to keep an eye out on this particular story and see if, and I am sure more will come out about this, but what do you think and feel about this? And there was quite a lot to absorb in this. So thank you very much for listening to this video today. I hope to catch you later. So, bye-bye.